Dior is a well-established company with a reputation for luxury. The French fashion label, which has been a household name since 1946, is famous for its grandeur and classic femininity. For more than 70 years, it has held the top spot in fashion's hierarchy, and its distinctive style has shaped the industry from its inception. Dior retains its status as a maker of renowned women's wear while being innovative yet conventional. How did the fashion brand come to be, and how did they achieve this coveted status in the fashion industry today? The history of Christian Dior. Christian Dior was born in Granville, a coastal town on Normandy's coast. He was the second of 5 children born to Maurice Dior, a rich fertilizer producer, and his wife, Madeleine Martin. He had 4 siblings, Raymond Dior, Jacqueline, Bernard, and Catherine Dior. Christian's family relocated to Paris when he was roughly 5 years old, although they still spent summers on the Normandy coast. Dior's family expected him to become a diplomat, but Dior was artistic and wanted to be active in the arts. Later, Christian persuaded his father to let him open an art gallery with 2 childhood friends instead of continuing his political career. His father agreed after much persuasion, but did not allow Christian to put the Dior name on the front of the gallery because he believed it would tarnish the family's image. Christian made money by selling his fashion sketches for around 10 cents a piece outside his residence. The gallery was highly successful and was a haven for dealers with artistic interests. In fact, Christian brought in works by renowned artists like Picasso. However, the already blossoming business came to an abrupt end in 1929 during the Great Depression. This period had a damaging effect on Dior. His mother and brother both passed away, and his father's fertilizer business shut down. Eventually, Christian Dior was forced to close his art gallery as a result of the loss of his financial backers, his parents. Christian knew that his fall was imminent. He loved to visit fortune tellers, and he had been told of his inevitable decline. However, he was also told that he would be poor for a while, but women would crave him for the rest of his life, a prophecy that would eventually manifest later in his life and after his death. It was at this time that Dior came into contact with fashion designer Robert Pichouet, before Dior was drafted for military service in 1940. This meeting marked Dior's introduction into the fashion industry as well as his career as a designer. 2 years later, in 1942, Christian Dior worked as a principal designer alongside Pierre Balmain for couturier Lucien Long, the founder of the fashion house Balmain. During the war, designers were in a somewhat moral conflict, as the economy in France and across Europe did not really accommodate luxury fashion. Working for Lucien Long, Dior dressed the Nazi officers' wives and French collaborators to preserve the fashion industry. At this time, Dior was eager for his own work to be exhibited, and this led him to establish his own fashion business, leading to the birth of the Christian Dior fashion brand. On December 16, 1946, the House of Dior was founded at 30 Avenue Montaigne in Paris. The modern Dior Corporation, on the other hand, commemorates 1947 as its founding year. The financial sponsorship of the company came from Marcel Boussac, a rich businessman. Boussac had first requested Christian Dior to design for Philippe de Gaston, but the Frenchman declined, preferring to start over under his own name rather than reviving an established brand. Christian Dior debuted his first fashion collection for spring-summer 1947 on February 12 of that year. The exhibition featured 90 models of his first collection on 6 mannequins in the salons of the main office at 30 Avenue Montaigne. The debut collection featured 2 lines that were originally called Carole and Hewitt. The new collection, however, became known as the Fresh Look when Harper's Bazaar editor-in-chief Carmel Snow exclaimed, "It's such a new look." At the conclusion of the 1940s, the new look was a groundbreaking phase for women. When the collection was presented, the editor-in-chief expressed his gratitude by stating, "It's quite a revolution, dear Christian." Christian Dior's inaugural collection is credited with revitalizing France's fashion industry. In addition, the new look revived the spirit of haute couture in France, as it was regarded as attractive and youthful. As a result, the new look became a trademark. Dior's designs were unique, especially in the 1940s, for introducing unusual silhouettes such as shorter or longer skirts, tighter waists, and emphasized busts. "I wanted my gowns to be built, that is, to be formed on the curves of the feminine body, whose outlines they would style. I emphasized the waist, the volume of the hips, and the breast. To give my designs additional heft, I had practically all of the materials lined in percale or taffeta, reviving a long-forgotten tradition," Christian Dior stated. However, as expected, not everyone was thrilled with the new look. Some thought the amount of material was excessive, especially after years of fabric shortages. Feminists in particular were furious, believing that the corseted designs were restricting and repressive, robbing women of their independence. Several protest groups were formed in response to the designs, including the League of Broke Husbands, which was made up of 30,000 men who were opposed to the costs connected with the amount of fabric required for such patterns. Nevertheless, the Dior brand continued to flourish. By the mid-1950s, the House of Dior was a highly respected fashion empire. Celebrities flocked to Christian Dior, with everyone from Rita Hayworth to Margot Fonteyn buying for the avant-garde new look. The fashion house dressed various other celebrities, including Marlene Dietrich, Ava Gardner, and members of the royal family. With such famous people wearing his outfits, Christian Dior's brand grew swiftly and became one of the most recognizable in fashion history. Dior quickly became a global brand. In 1948, a shop on 5th Avenue and 57th Street in New York City opened, bringing Dior to the United States for the first time. With the global debut comes a larger collection. In the meantime, Dior's younger sister Catherine was captured by the Gestapo for joining the French resistance, resulting in her imprisonment at the Ravensbrück concentration camp. Fortunately, she survived and was liberated in 1945. About 2 years after the company became a global brand, Dior produced his signature perfume, Miss Dior, which he dedicated to his sister. Around this time, Dior understood that in order to maintain his new look, his business needed to give the whole fashion experience. This required licensing the Dior brand for accessories. The Dior client could now have jackets, shoes, caps, and everything else needed to fully embody the new look from head to toe. Yves Saint Laurent joins the fashion house. When Yves Saint Laurent was 19 years old and a bit green, he began working for Christian Dior. He started as Dior's assistant, but it didn't take long for the creative genius behind the company to see the young Frenchman's promise. According to Vogue, Dior visited Saint Laurent's mother in 1957 to inform her that he had picked her son to succeed him as the brand's creative director when the time came. Despite the fact that he was only 21 years old at the time, Dior recognized his eye for fashion and talent for creating right away. Yves Saint Laurent takes over Dior after the death of Christian Dior. When Christian Dior died tragically in 1957, 21-year-old Yves Saint Laurent took over as creative director of the renowned fashion brand. Saint Laurent continued Christian Dior's heritage by adopting similar fabrics and keeping proportions and shapes identical. Saint Laurent's collections, on the other hand, included clothes that were softer, lighter, and simpler to wear. Because of his success at the fashion firm, Saint Laurent's designs got more daring until 1960, when his Bohemian collection was widely criticized. Later on, Saint Laurent was called up to join the French army, forcing him to quit Maison Dior, which the Dior administration did not object to. From Saint Laurent to Marc Bohan. Yves Saint Laurent left in the late 1960s and Marc Bohan was named creative director. He was credited with keeping the Dior name at the top of fashion while still producing wearable, exquisite apparel, and women's wear daily asserted that Bohan rescued the brand. Bohan's assistant, Philippe Guibourge, presented the brand's first French ready-to-wear line, Miss Dior, in 1967. Marc Bohan is succeeded by Franco Foray. Franco Foray, an Italian-born designer, took over as lead designer in 1989. Dior, as the first non-French designer to take over the creative reins at Dior, jettisoned the conventional Dior look. Foray, known for his feminine, romantic designs, created a new style idea that was described as refined, sober, and strict. Foray received the d'Or as the leader of haute couture, haute furore, women's ready-to-wear furs, and women's accessories collections. From 1976 through 1990, the d'Or, sometimes known as the Golden Dice, was given to haute couture designers twice a year in France. By 1990, Dior stores had emerged in luxury retail districts in New York City, Los Angeles, and Tokyo. Dior's sales in that year were $129.3 million, with a net income of $22 million. The label's sales had risen to $177 million by 1995, with a net profit of $26.9 million. That same year, Bernadette Chirac, wife of former French President Jacques Chirac, approached Christian Dior and expressed her desire to present the Princess of Wales with a one-of-a-kind handbag during her visit to Paris. The house designed a structured black bag, commonly known as the chouchou. Lady Diana received it at the Saison exhibition at the Grand Palais. The bag was later seen on the princess's arm during a visit to a children's home in Birmingham. That day, she was pictured with a bag and a child in her arms. She was spotted wearing her favorite purse again a few weeks later on a state visit to Argentina. In 1996, Dior released the bag in a greater quantity and changed the name to Lady Dior with Princess Diana's consent. 200,000 models were sold in 2 years, resulting in a tremendous boost in Dior's leather goods sales. Several celebrities, including Carla Bruni, Diana Kruger, Monica Bellucci, and Marion Cotillard, have been the faces of Lady Dior over the years. The Lady Dior is still a famous item for the brand. John Galliano has taken over for Franco Foray. In 1997, Dior replaced Franco Foray as creative director with John Galliano, under the influence of Anna Wintour, editor-in-chief of Vogue. Given that a non-Frenchman was once again in charge of the creative process, the decision to choose a British designer caused considerable criticism. Bernard Arnault, the chairman of Dior, likened Galliano to Christian Dior, stating that Christian Dior and Galliano have a similar level of creative ability. He embodies Monsieur Dior's unique fusion of modernity, feminism, and romance. One may detect Dior-inspired elements in all of his works, including his suits and gowns. In 2011, John Galliano was accused of uttering anti-Semitic statements, which caused instability to erupt within the Dior fashion business. It was a public relations disaster for the label. Naturally, Galliano was dismissed in March, just in time for the launch of his Fall/Winter 2011 collection, which went on without him. Eventually, Raf Simons was appointed as the new artistic director of Dior on April 11, 2012. In 2016, it was announced that Maria Grazia Chiuri would succeed Hedi Slimane, who had taken over from Raf Simons as artistic director. It was a huge step for the French fashion house, as Grazia Chiuri became the first woman to ever hold the position of artistic director. A big name in the fashion industry. Chiuri gave a feminine touch to Christian Dior's design, famously launching her feminist-centric collection, yet her direction seemed consistent with what Dior did all those years before. Although all of the male creative directors who came before her were important to the company in their own way, Chiuri introduced a strong moral compass to the label, transforming it from feminine to feminist. In doing so, she secured a key position for Dior in fashion that is both current and timeless. Despite his short life and emergence in the French fashion industry, Christian Dior left behind a legacy that lives on in the fashion empire he founded. Which part of this story fascinates you? For more information like this, don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on the notification button.